Do you ever feel like you're a single parent even when you're not? Lately, I've been drowning in the chaos of parenting, and it feels like my partner, my wife, is nowhere to be found. Don't get me wrong, I love our kids more than anything, but I'm starting to resent her for leaving me to handle everything alone. It's like I'm juggling flaming swords while she's blissfully unaware, and I'm scared of what this is doing to our marriage. How did we get here, and is there a way back? I'm a 35-year-old dad of two incredible kids, ages 7 and 4. My wife and I have been married for almost a decade, and for the most part, it's been a pretty solid journey. We both work full-time. I'm in IT and she's in marketing. We've always managed to balance our careers and family life, or so I thought, but lately it's like the scales have tipped, and I'm left wondering how things got so lopsided. This shift didn't happen overnight. It started subtly, with her late nights at work becoming more frequent. At first, I didn't mind picking up the slack at home. I figured it was just a busy season for her, and she'd do the same for me if roles were reversed. But those busy seasons stretched into months, and suddenly I was the one handling all the school pickups, doctor's appointments, and bedtime routines. Initially, I brushed off my frustration, telling myself that it was just a rough patch. I wanted to be supportive, but the more I handled alone, the more it gnawed at me. I remember the first time it really hit me. I was trying to help my oldest with homework while our youngest threw a tantrum, and all I could think was, where is she? Why am I doing this alone? I started feeling like a ghost in my own marriage, and as much as I hate to admit it, the resentment began to build. It's confusing and painful because I still love her deeply, but I can't shake the feeling that I've been abandoned in this parenting journey. So here I am, wondering if I'm overreacting or if there's a deeper issue at play that we need to address. As time went on, the late nights at work for my wife turned into weekend conferences and out-of-town trips. It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. I could see things getting worse, but I felt powerless to stop it. Our communication dwindled, reduced to brief, tired exchanges at the end of each day. I tried to bring up my concerns, but every time I did, she seemed genuinely surprised, as if she hadn't noticed how much things had changed. Then came the first real curveball. It was a Saturday morning, and I had planned to take the kids to the park. As I was packing snacks, I got a call from my wife. She was being asked to attend a last-minute work retreat that very weekend. The disappointment hit me hard, but the look on our kids' faces was even worse. I assured them we'd still have fun, but I felt the weight of having to explain why Mommy wasn't joining us once again. That weekend was a turning point. It forced me to acknowledge that this wasn't just a phase. I was no longer just holding down the fort. I was running the whole battleground on my own. The extra responsibilities were piling up, and my energy was draining fast. I started having trouble sleeping, my mind constantly racing with worries about the kids, my job, and the growing distance between my wife and me. Financial strain added another layer of stress. With her being away more often, we had to hire additional childcare help, which was a significant hit to our budget. It was frustrating, almost ironic, that her increased work hours meant to improve our finances were actually costing us more. I tried to juggle my job with parenting, but the lines were blurring and I was afraid of slipping up at work. One night, after a particularly long day, I found myself alone in the living room, staring blankly at the wall. I felt a mix of fear and helplessness wash over me. What if this was the new normal? What if I couldn't keep up? The pressure was immense, and I started questioning my own capabilities as a father and husband. The emotional toll was heavier than I anticipated. My frustration was boiling over into resentment, and it terrified me. I never imagined I'd feel this way towards the woman I love. I was torn between wanting to confront her about how I felt and fearing it would push her further away. The complexity of the situation was overwhelming, and I realized that finding a solution was going to be far more complicated than I had hoped. Determined not to let resentment destroy our marriage, I decided to take proactive steps. My first move was to initiate a heartfelt conversation with my wife. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I sat her down and shared my feelings, how overwhelmed I felt and how much I missed our partnership. She listened intently, but her initial reaction was one of surprise. She had been so engrossed in work that she hadn't realized the extent of my struggles. In an effort to better communicate, we agreed to set aside time each week to discuss our schedules and reconnect. For a while, this worked. We talked more openly about the pressures of our jobs and how we could support each other better. I even suggested we consider hiring a part-time nanny to help ease the burden at home, which she agreed to explore. I also sought advice from friends and fellow parents. Some recommended couples therapy, which I brought up with my wife. She seemed hesitant, citing her busy schedule, but promised to consider it. Meanwhile, I focused on managing our finances better. I created a stricter budget to offset the cost of childcare and tried to cut unnecessary expenses. It was tough, but it felt good to have some control back. Just as things seemed to be improving, the second curveball hit. My wife was offered a promotion, a fantastic opportunity that required even more travel and late nights. When she told me, I felt a mix of pride and dread. This was her dream job, but it meant even less time at home. She was torn too. She wanted the career advancement, but knew the timing was less than ideal. We discussed the possibility of her turning down the offer or negotiating a more flexible arrangement. However, the promotion was a package deal with limited room for negotiation. The situation left us both feeling stuck. It was a harsh reminder of how unpredictable life can be and how our best-laid plans can unravel in an instant. This new challenge forced us to reassess our priorities. I tried to stay supportive, but the added strain was undeniable. My efforts to cope felt like a temporary fix rather than a solution. As much as I wanted to believe we could balance it all, the reality was daunting, and I feared we might be heading towards a breaking point. The constant juggling act has taken a significant toll on me, both emotionally and mentally. I find myself feeling more isolated than ever, caught in the never-ending cycle of work, parenting, and trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy in our home. The emotional exhaustion is like an invisible weight that I carry everywhere, making even the simplest tasks feel monumental. I've noticed a growing sense of distance not only from my wife but also from friends and family. Social invitations are often turned down because I'm too tired or too busy, and I rarely have the energy for casual conversations. This isolation feeds into a feeling of loneliness that I haven't felt in years, one that echoes the empty spaces left by the diminishing connection with my wife. Arguments have become more frequent, mostly about small things that shouldn't matter but somehow do. They stem from built-up frustrations and misunderstandings that neither of us fully know how to address. It's heartbreaking to watch our communication break down in this way, as if the once clear lines of understanding have been tangled beyond recognition. The stress of it all has seeped into my work life too. My focus has been slipping, and I've caught myself making simple mistakes that I wouldn't normally make. I live in constant fear of a major slip-up that could jeopardize my job. It's like walking a tightrope with no safety net, knowing that any misstep could send everything crashing down. There's an internal conflict raging within me, a battle between the need to support my wife in her career and the desire to reclaim the partnership we once had. I feel guilty for resenting her success and guilty for feeling trapped by my own responsibilities. This guilt is compounded by a sense of hopelessness, as every attempt to improve our situation seems to only buy temporary relief. Day-to-day life has become a balancing act of managing my own expectations and trying to meet the needs of those around me. I wake up each morning hoping for change, yet fearing what another day might bring. The unresolved tension hangs over our household like a storm cloud always threatening to break. As I continue to navigate this path, I can't help but wonder if things will ever go back to how they were, or if we'll find a new normal that we can both live with. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the weight of our unresolved issues became nearly unbearable. Despite all my efforts, from conversations to budget cuts, nothing seemed to bring us back to the partnership we once had. The idea of continuing like this indefinitely filled me with dread, and I found myself contemplating more drastic measures. For the first time, I considered the unthinkable, whether a temporary separation might give us both the space to reevaluate our priorities. The thought terrified me, as it went against everything I believed in about marriage and family. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had to change, and soon. I feared the long-term consequences of such a decision. What would it mean for our kids? How would it impact our family dynamic? And could we ever truly recover? The social stigma and the idea of explaining this to friends and family weighed heavily on my mind. But the thought of continuing down this path, with the resentment and distance growing, felt equally daunting. Part of me wondered if a drastic lifestyle change might help. Perhaps moving closer to my wife's workplace to reduce her commute, or considering a job change for myself to allow more flexibility. Yet each option felt fraught with uncertainty and risk, and I questioned whether they'd address the root of our issues. I was torn between taking decisive action and the fear of what those actions might mean for our future. Would it solve our problems or simply create new ones? The uncertainty left me in a state of paralysis, unable to move forward but unwilling to stay stuck. In this limbo, I grappled with self-doubt and worry about making the wrong choice. The stakes felt impossibly high, and as I stood at this crossroads, all I could do was hope for clarity and the courage to make the right decision for our family. Reflecting on this journey, I'm left feeling like I'm standing on the edge of a precipice, unsure of which way to turn. I've tried so hard to keep everything together, but the weight of responsibility and emotional strain has left me exhausted and uncertain about the future. Despite my best efforts to communicate and make changes, the balance we once had seems elusive. I'm reaching out to this community because I know I'm not alone. There must be others who have faced similar struggles. Those who have managed to navigate the delicate balance between career aspirations and family commitments. I need to know if anyone has found a way to reconcile these conflicting demands without losing themselves or their relationship in the process. Is there a way to support my wife's career while still preserving the partnership and family life we both cherish? Have any of you found solutions or compromises that have worked? Or is there something I'm missing, a perspective I haven't yet considered that could help us find a new normal? Maybe I'm just venting, trying to make sense of this tangled mess of emotions. But I hold on to the hope that someone might offer a fresh insight or at least share a similar experience that makes me feel less isolated. Thank you for listening and for any advice you might offer. Sometimes just knowing there's a supportive community out there can make all the difference.